Welcome to Biztech's Asia's Hottest Startup Show, the show where we feature hot startups across Asia, sharing their entrepreneurial journeys and sharing with us their journey towards becoming Asia's next tech unicorns. Now, today we feature the unicorn in the making, Una Brands. Now, Una Brands taps on one of the biggest funding trends in the past year, where companies consolidate small e-commerce brands. Many of these notable startups in this space, like Terrazzo, Berlin Brand Group, and Branded Groups, focus on consolidating Amazon marketplace sellers. Now, here to tell us about Una Brands is Kiren Tanna, its co-founder and CEO. Now, welcome to the show, Kiren.
Ryan, is great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, Kiren, walk us through what Una Brands does.
So Una Brands is very simple in what we want to do, right? Which is we want to build APAC's largest conglomerate of online brands. Something like a Unilever or a P&G, but on online brands, digitally native brands. And to do that, what we do is we acquire profitable online sellers in the APAC region. And then we work with them to leverage our expertise on growing the brands in the region, on supply chain, on the back-end operations, and also invest in expanding the brand into new areas. We do this not just on Amazon, as many other players have done in the past, but we are doing this on APAC platforms, right? So the local ones on Shopee, Lazada, even Shopify platforms, which are selling directly on eBay in Australia. So we don't restrict ourselves to just Amazon, and we believe that to be successful in this region, we have to work with the local platforms as well.
Now, why have you decided to embark on this business model of acquiring brands as opposed to just kind of building your own brands?
So I think what we have seen in the region is that there is a big issue in terms of there are a lot of very good online sellers who are selling on various platforms in this region. Many of them have built a very, very interesting business in the last few years, but what they miss is a lack of a liquidity option. So this is something which exists in US and European markets, where if you're a seller who is selling online, you know that if you build a good business, then you can sell that business to someone else. There are many players who will be interested in acquiring your business, which gives you the liquidity which you put all these years of effort into building the business. Now you can cash out some of it and get that liquidity option, right? So we saw that this was missing in the APAC region, particularly in local platforms or businesses who are selling locally. And so we saw this need in the market, and that's how the idea for Una was born, right? And we want to offer sellers in this region a simple liquidity option, 100% cash offer, no complications, very fast process. So that's the need in the market we saw. For ourselves as well, going this route of acquiring online brands and sellers versus building ourselves, we believe that this is a faster way to build the scale and the expertise and the infrastructure needed for us to become successful in a shorter period of time by leveraging the product market fit that some of these sellers already have been able to achieve, versus building in a slow way with a lot of uncertainty. We think this is a fast way to get into a scale, then we can add some more value on the operations side.
Yeah, and this is obviously a proven market that works, essentially. Now you're just expanding this in Asia Pacific, where it's largely still white space.
Exactly. So Asia Pacific, there is, with the growth in commerce, Asia Pacific has not been behind. And so you see Southeast Asia, Australia, all growing very rapidly, especially with the boost around the COVID time. E-commerce has grown very rapidly in this time frame, and we see that then trickle down to not just larger brands but also smaller brands who were doing, let's say, 100,000 of revenue. Now they're inching close to $1 million of revenue in the last few years. So you see a lot of these brands which were mini and small, or run by very small resources or teams, sometimes as a side hustle, become much larger now, and have then the issues around scaling up, right? So from being just a one-person team, now suddenly you may need to hire more people, or you need to start bothering about taxes and other stuff, which was not as much of an issue with the smaller business before. So there are multiple challenges for businesses as they scale up, and that's what we are seeing in the Asian market as well, which is something that the West has experienced in let's say 5 years back, but now with the growth of e-commerce, we are experiencing it now at this time.
Now, Kiren, I took a look at your team, and your team is made up of some really smart, experienced people in this space, which obviously have been attractive for investors to plunk in investment into you. Now, could you kind of share with us who are your key members of your team and the sort of backgrounds that they have?
Yeah, so I think maybe I'll just begin a little bit with myself, right, as the CEO of the company. This is my third startup, so I have had founder and CEO of foodpanda, which hopefully the audience already knows and
Yeah.
uses. Very successful company, amongst the largest food delivery companies in the region.
And you sold that to Delivery Hero? That was the
Yeah,
exit.
so that business was acquired by Delivery Hero, which is a German listed company. My second startup was Zen Rooms, which is a budget hotel chain present across Southeast Asia, very popular in Philippines and Indonesia and also Singapore. So that was my second startup, also acquired by a Korean company called Yanolja. Uh, so I've had good experience building and scaling startups in this region, and then going from idea to exit, right? So from scratch all the way, hiring the first few people to growing the business to a very large scale, and then finding partners who invest and acquire us. So I think having done that a couple of times before, very confident that we can replicate the same with Una Brands, and also help other entrepreneurs and startups selling online to achieve these kind of exits as well. So that's about me. I have been in APAC for the last 14 years, based out of Singapore, work across the region, right from Hong Kong to Australia. So deep expertise in this region. On my co-founders, I have four other co-founders, which each bring very unique skill set into making Una brand successful. So you have Tobias, spent about 6 years at Lazada doing various roles, largely on the operations side, very well versed in supply chain and logistics in the region. He was also responsible for setting up Lazada's cross-border business, so helping sellers sell based in one country, sell into other countries in the region. For a small seller to be able to sell across, let's say an Indonesian seller wants to sell to Singapore or wants to sell to Malaysia, there's a lot of hassle that they have to go through, which becomes complicated for a smaller seller to figure out the duties and the taxes, and the partnerships involved in making that happen. That's something that we aim to bring, in a one-stop solution to our sellers, is to take them across the region and being able to sell in a very broad ASEAN market or broad APAC market, versus being just focused in one country. So Tobias has a lot of experience having set it up for Lazada, and that's something that we aim to bring through the expertise that we have in the team, to our sellers as well. Second co-founder, Kushal, uh, investment banker, spent more than 4 years at UBS, then spent the last 2 years in the partnerships and corporate development team at Ninjavan. And so he heads our investment and acquisitions team. So he's identifying with sellers that we should be speaking to. Once we have talked to the sellers, then using some of the data that they share with us, put a valuation on what we think the business is worth, and put a deal structure on what we think can be attractive and value creative for the partners. And so he's heading this deals team, which is helping us close the deals in terms of acquiring our seller partners. Then we have Adrian. Adrian has been a consultant based in Australia with BCG for many years now, and he's joined our team in Australia to head up our Australian business. So we are seeing already very good traction in Australia. A lot of sellers who are individuals selling very successfully online, building multi-million-dollar businesses with very small setups. So he is heading our Australia business. And finally, we have Srini, about 20 years of experience in engineering and data science. We believe that given Una Brands at the end of the day is a retail business, while we acquire brands, we are then having retail brands that work with us selling online, and data is very important. So from day one, we want to build a backend and an infrastructure very data-driven, multi-channel, so working with different channels, Lazada, Shopee, eBay, Shopify, working seamlessly in one system. So that's something that we're building from day one. And Srini, having run multiple engineering teams and also data science consulting company for the last 6 or 7 years, he's the ideal guy to build it for us. So that's our team. On the founding side, we believe that we have very strong team to bring the vision for Una brands to life. And we are also right now very aggressively hiring. After our funding round, we are scaling our teams up on both acquisitions as well as managing the brands.
And where are you with these teams? Where are they going to be based, in Singapore?
So today we have teams in 3 locations. So Singapore is the headquarters of the business. And so a lot of the teams are being based here, especially the teams which are evaluating businesses across the region and also managing some of the brands across the region.
Okay.
So that's the headquarters. We also have teams on the ground in Australia, which the team headed by Adrian. And so we are hiring for various functions in Australia as well. And then we have Srini and his team is based in India, where we are hiring engineering and data science talent.
Acquisitions is a big part of your business. What sort of brands and companies are you looking for in terms of size, in terms of category, and what sort of acquisition price range are you looking to pay for these sort of companies?
On the size part, we have kept a very broad range of sellers that we want to speak to. So on the low side, we are looking at sellers who are doing minimum $300,000 of revenue, 300,000 US dollars of revenue.
Okay.
And on the upside, we are talking to brands as large as 10 to 20 million of revenue, right? So,
okay.
So right across the spectrum. Most of the brands that we end up in the pipeline are in the 1 to 3 million revenue range. So that's the bread and butter for us. So I would say $500,000 to 3 million is the bulk of the businesses that we are speaking to, but we have a broad range of whom we want to speak to. We also want to acquire profitable sellers. So some sellers who after taking out overheads are profitable. Those sellers are in our radar. We don't want to do turnaround cases, at least at this stage. So we don't want to acquire sellers who are currently unprofitable and then we turn them around into profitable. So that we are not focusing on in the immediate term. So we are only looking at profitable sellers at this time. In terms of categories, we have a few categories which we are focused on, which has naturally happened as most of the businesses are coming in these categories. But we're not hard and fast on these categories alone. But this is something which has happened a lot more in the pipeline that we have. But we are category agnostic except for a few. So the ones we have seen a lot of brands already are in home and living, babies and pets, personal care and wellness, and F&B, which is non-fresh. Somehow in Southeast Asia, you have a lot of successful F&B brands which are selling online, but non-fresh. Yeah, so don't need cold chain supply.
Okay.
Or cold chain warehousing, for example.
Okay.
We don't want to do fast fashion. We don't want to do commoditized electronics like phone chargers or power banks and smartphones. So we don't do those.
Because your value add is limited there, isn't it?
So our value add is limited and the businesses are very complex. So inventory management becomes complicated. You have many SKUs in fashion, different sizes, different colors.
Fast fashion, the big issue is the returns and how you deal with that back-end supply chain, post-returns.
Yeah, post returns and you have to in fast fashion everything changes in 3 or 4 months. So whatever worked last time is not going to work this year. So you need to have an eye for fashion, which we will develop at some point of time. But right now we think it's too complicated for us.
And generally with these brands, what sort of growth trajectory do you expect from them, and what sort of value add do you think you would add post acquisition?
Sure. So I think we believe that with the expertise that we bring to the table, there's a lot of growth related activities that we can work with the brand after about 3 to 6 months of making sure that we have acquired in a very stable fashion. We want to work on many growth related activities for the brands and try to scale them up anywhere from 30 to 100% a year, right? So that's the targets that we have for scaling the brands once we have acquired them. And a lot of activities which will go on the growth side, right from making sure that they are present on all the marketplaces which are relevant in that country. So many Many times sellers are selling maybe only on Amazon in certain countries, but not on the other platforms. Can we bring them to eBay, for example, in Australia, if they're only selling on Amazon? Can we bring them, if they're selling only on Shopee and Lazada, can we bring them to Tokopedia in Indonesia? So making sure that the distribution is perfect, and we are not letting go of the remaining 5-10% or 20% of the sales by not being on certain platforms.
It's so clear to me as I speak to you now how quickly you could acquire and scale a business, because many small 1-2 person businesses would focus on perhaps one platform, maximum two platforms, because you just don't have the resources. You need a focus. So post acquisition, you can just scale them just by adding platforms almost immediately.
Almost immediately, and quick, like almost immediate results as well, right? And we are able to do this not because we are bigger or something like that, but because we have very automated systems. So we are able to manage the brand across multiple platforms in a very automated fashion, and not open 20 tabs on Chrome and try to manage the brand in 20 Chrome tabs. And that's something that typically the technology or the scale is not available for smaller sellers. So there's immediate, as you say, there's immediate results which can be visible from just that one activity.
Now, Kiren, with this strategy, obviously, what sort of revenue targets are you looking at in 2021, 2022?
So in terms of, I think yeah, in terms of for the business itself, we're looking to acquire 10 to 15 brands this year, and then scale off that next year. And so yeah, that's the plan for us at this point of time. And the idea is to make sure that we have set up the right infrastructure and the teams to be able to grow these brands in a sustainable fashion. That's what we want to do this year, and then next year, then really accelerate the work that we're doing in terms of growing the business. So that's how we're thinking about this at this stage.
Now, Kiren, because there is a lot of competition in this space now, companies are being funded like you to go around and acquire brands. If I'm a brand that is selling online right now, I'm attractive, I'm talking to a couple of people, why should I take your money, Kiren, and be acquired by you?
No, so I think that's a great question. So I think a lot of the competition that we have is mostly concentrated on Amazon businesses, and as we know, in this region, most businesses are not Amazon businesses.
Yes.
And so we have actually very little competition in non-Amazon space. Many times the sellers that we're speaking to are just speaking to us, and the main thing is to educate the seller on the availability of a liquidity option which they did not have before. So there's a little bit of education involved in saying, hey, did you know that you can for a nice maybe $1 million exit, you can sell your business to someone. That option just did not exist. You started off as a small seller, and then you grew to 1 million revenue, let's say, but you cannot exit, and so you have to run that business even though there is not so much growth that you can bring to the business yourself
anymore. Right? Yes, it just becomes something that you're doing because it's making you money, but it's not going to make you rich. And you're very right to say that in Asia, that's a big gap in terms of an exit opportunity for this.
Exactly, and so that's the competition, is basically to educate the sellers in availability of this option. We are able to do this because we do the hard work, right? So we don't shy away from the multiple channels that we have to manage, from the logistics and infrastructure that we have to build a partner network around.
Yeah, because you've got economies of scale. If you're buying 10, 15 brands, you've got economies of scales. You basically can drive down your costs per unit, your logistics cost. Everything becomes a lot more efficient.
Yeah, and with Amazon, like talking about competition with Amazon, it's very easy on Amazon because Amazon does everything for you. So they do right from fulfillment to marketing to customer service, everything you can do on Amazon. Versus once you do multi-channel, you have to take care of fulfillment yourself. So we do it through our partner network. You have to manage marketing on multiple brands or multiple channels, which is where we use technology. So we don't shy away from doing the hard work, which is required for us to be successful in the APAC region. So and we believe that we have the right team to also make this happen.
how do you value these businesses in general? What sort of multiples or valuation matrices do you use to acquire these businesses?
So I think, yeah, so that's a great question again. So the way in which we value the businesses, we look at sellers who are, as I said, who are in certain revenue range and profitable. So we calculate what profits they have. Then what we do is we add back what we believe are corporate overheads, or teams that our central teams would be able to scale that part of the cost up. For example, if the seller is paying themselves some sort of a salary, or they are spending on corporate overheads, on for example offices, or other overheads, because we have central teams which are tackling all of these from different locations. We add back those costs in evaluating the business and look at what we call the seller discretionary expense, which is what is the expense that the business is incurring, assuming there are no overheads or owner salaries. And then we value the business as a multiple of these seller discretionary expenses. So
Okay. Generally, what sort of range are you looking at in terms of multiple? Is it a multiple of turnover, or is it a standard PE ratio?
So it's a multiple of some sort of a adjusted EBITDA, right? So we take the EBITDA, adjust it for overhead expenses, and we give credit back to the seller. So we assume the EBITDA is higher because one-off expenses or overhead expenses we add back, and then we assume a multiple of this. This multiple can be in the range of 2 to 4x of EBITDA, adjusted EBITDA for the seller.
Okay.
Depending on which category, how fast they're growing. So that's the typical structure. We also, for fast growing businesses, offer a profit share for the seller to continue to profit from the business as we grow it. And so we have profit share mechanisms that are built into our
That's
offer.
very interesting, Kiren. So tell us about the profit share mechanism, because that makes it attractive. Because if I'm an entrepreneur, and you know this as well, because as entrepreneurs, sometimes we have emotions a lot of times attached to the business, and this is a small seller, probably 1-2 persons. They built this up, as you said quite correctly, side hustle, and then it's grown to a substantial amount of business that someone like you wants to acquire. But there's some emotion in it. So if you're going to sell 100%, the profit share option becomes a very attractive option. How do you do that, and what sort of earnout does this company have?
No, you rightly mentioned there's a lot of emotion attached. Sometimes it's an emotion of saying, hey, I've grown this business a lot. Now I'm a bit tired of managing it on a day-to-day basis. So there's this other side emotion as well, and then as well saying, hey, it's my baby. I have grown this over the last 3-4 years into a very profitable company, and I'm giving away it to someone else or to manage. But then that's where we also have this upside sharing, right? Which is saying, hey, we acquire a business. We have these ideas to grow the business over the next couple of years, and this is how we will execute it with your support. And as a result, we share the upside with the sellers, which is calculated as what was the profit when we acquired and how much have we been able to grow it in the next 2 years. And then we keep some part of the profit. We also share the other part of the profit with the sellers.
Okay. Wow, that sounds like a very good way to motivate the seller. Now, you've just raised 40 million in debt and equity financing. Why did you take that approach as opposed to a straight equity injection? Was that because you feel that it's still very early days in the game, and you wanted to have that flexibility?
No, so we are very well capitalized with $40 million and good mix of debt and equity. The reason why we also have debt plus equity is we use debt as a non-dilutive mechanism to acquire the brand. So the debt is paying for the acquisition of the brands, and okay. So we acquire the cash consideration is debt. Then, as I said, we acquire profitable sellers. So the idea is to use this profit and grow the profit to then repay or service the debt. And once we are able to do that, and if we are able to grow the business and the profits of the business, then the debt is repaid using the asset that we have acquired, and right. As a result, we don't need to be very dilutive on the capital, on the equity capital side. So that's the idea, and we have borrowed these ideas from the West, where it has been very successful with Amazon sellers, where brands have used debt very nicely to build a good portfolio of online brands that they've acquired, and we have enough. Currently, we have enough capital on both equity and debt side to be able to acquire 20 to 30 brands with this capital.
Kiren, you've had two successful exits, as you mentioned, foodpanda and Zen Rooms. What are the key lessons that you've learned in your journey so far that you can share with other entrepreneurs and business leaders?
No, and so a lot of sleepless nights is is what I've learned how to deal with them. No, but jokes apart, there's a lot of learning that I've had. I've been very lucky to be have been involved in building both those businesses from scratch, from idea all the way to exit, and be look back very fondly on those memories and the success that both brands have been able to achieve. A lot of learnings, but I think some stand out for me. The importance of building a strong team and letting them shine in the best way that they are able to. Right. I think that's something which is very important for any business, especially in the initial days as they look to scale up. To hire exceptional people and then give them the freedom without bogging them down too much. Let them be the entrepreneur, right? So as long as every employee in the company or every associate is working in a way where they're thinking like an entrepreneur and have that freedom to try and fail at times, but take a lot of initiative. That's something that has worked very well for both the businesses that I have been able to build, and that comes quite a lot trickles down from the culture that you build very early stages of the business. Once you have that independent mindset where everyone's behaving like an entrepreneur, uh, that then percolates down into the team and sustains over a long period of time. So that's, I think, something which every startup finds their own way, and this is the style that most of my startups have ended up being. The other thing which I've learned through the journey is don't be afraid to do the hard work, and the business model will adapt over time, and you will have to do more hard work, but that's something which is very beneficial. So for example, in foodpanda, when we started off, we let the restaurants deliver and we didn't have our own delivery personnel in most countries. But over a period of time, we started to have our own delivery riders. Today, it contributes, own delivery contributes about 99% of the business in many countries. And but it's more hard work. You have to hire drivers. You have to manage the human resource aspect of it. You have to cater to a lot of issues can crop up every day. But once you have done that, the customer gets better experience. You have much more defensibility in the business, and you can scale up in a much faster way by being able to do that hard work. So I think that's something which also in Zen Rooms I saw the same thing. We were initially more of a marketplace in Zen Rooms. Over a period of time, we got more into operating the hotel's various aspects. Not unlike Una, we used to handle the central pricing, revenue management, as well as run some businesses, run some of the hotels with our own staff. So don't be afraid to do hard work because that will create a very sustainable brand and business for you. And that's something that we keep in mind even as we build Una. To not be afraid to do the hard work, not be afraid to do multi-channel, not be afraid to work with partners on logistics and supply chain. So that's something that we have in our DNA. And finally is startup is a very building a business is a very up and down. While you can look back and enjoy the successes, the path is very trough and ebb and flow. So there's a lot of ups and downs in the way, and resiliency is very important. So being very resilient, looking at the situation and seeing what's the best outcome in any given situation, to always find a way out of situations if they're not conducive to you, and yeah, the good times, then capitalizing on the good times. So I think that's a few uh, things as I reflect on my journey over the last 10 years building food pandas and rooms and now Luna brands.
Kiren, thank you very much for a very enlightening interview.
No, thanks so much, Brian. It was lovely speaking to you, and hope to come back again at some point of time with more success story on Una this time.
Yeah, I'd love to have you on the show again. We've been speaking to Kiren Tanna, co-founder and CEO of Una Brands on Biztech's Asia's Hottest Startup Show. I'm Brian Fernandez. This video will be on our Facebook and LinkedIn sites as well as our website www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe our various platforms. Thank you very much for tuning in.